Hi, in this tutorial we're going to be going over some of the advanced surfacing features that Solidworks has to offer. And for this example we're going to be creating an ice cream scooper. So I'm going to create a new part, of course, and I'm going to create a sketch on the right plane, and I'm going to drag out a line starting on the origin and coming out to be 4 inches. And you can change your units to be inches if you need to. So my second sketch is going to be here on the front plane. I'm going to create a sketch on this plane of a circle that's 1.2 inches. And I'm also going to create another sketch on this point here at the end of the line. And so to do that, I'm going to have to create another plane. So I'm going to click on Reference Geometry, select Plane. My first reference is going to be my front plane, and my second one is going to be this point. And so on plane 1, I'm going to create a sketch. I'm going to make that 0.8 inches and pull out a dimension for that. Okay, great. So from here, we have 3 sketches total. And so what I'm going to show is how to create first a surface feature. Here on the Surfaces tab, you're going to come and create a loft, very simple loft between these two circles. So click on Lofted Surface, and your 2 profiles are going to be circle number 1 and circle number 2. So we're not going to add any guide curves, we're not going to really add anything else. This line between the 2 circles is really there just for dimensioning the distance between them. So I'm going to check this, and now it's created. Okay, great. Step 2 is we're going to create a sketch on the right plane. And so in this sketch, we're going to create an arc. And I'm going to make this arc 1.38 as the radius. And so from here, I'm going to set a dimension between these 2 points. I'm going to make this dimension, let's say, 2.31. Okay, great. And so from here, let me bring this a little closer. I'm going to select my original line, and I'm going to come up here to Convert Entities, click on Convert Entities. And so what I've done just now is this line here is going to be part of my current sketch. So you can click on it and you can set a dimension between the line that we just created and my converted line. And so I'm going to make this dimension 7 degrees. Okay, so from here, I need to set a couple more dimensions from the origin in order to place this where I want it to be. So I'm going to make this dimension 4.27, and I'm going to set another dimension in the other direction, and this one is going to be 0.79. So as you could see, my sketch right now is fully defined. So everything is in black and no entities here can move. And so with this sketch finished, I'm going to go ahead and create another sketch on the same plane. So I'm going to come up here and exit out of this sketch, and I'm going to come over and click on the right plane, and I'm going to start a sketch on the right plane. From here, I'm going to come up and select the 3-point arc. I'm going to click on this point that we made in our previous sketch. I'm going to drag it out and place it here. And I'm going to come up here again and select another 3-point arc and attach that to the endpoint of the first 3-point arc we made. I'm going to select both of these lines and make them tangent. I'm also going to create another straight line coming off of the second arc that we made. So from here we have this arc, and this line. I'm actually going to select both of these in order to make these tangent as well. So now we have two arcs and a line that are all connected and that are all tangent to each other. So from here, I'm going to select the bottom point of this circle on the surface that we made before, and I'm going to click on it. It should come up highlighted in yellow right over here. And then I'm going to select this point, and I'm going to set these to be coincident with each other. And your sketch, this might happen in your sketch. You really just have to drag around the circle to bring it back. And so from here, I'm just going to place this where I feel visually necessary. I'm going to throw a few dimensions on the arcs I made just to be able to fully define this sketch. I'm going to select one more dimension from, let's say, this point to where these two meet. Okay. And now my sketch is fully defined, so I'm going to exit. And so from here, we can go ahead and continue by creating a plane on this line that we made. So I'm going to go to Features, and I'm going to come up to Reference Geometry and create a plane. My first reference is going to be this line, and my second reference is going to be the right plane. As you could see here, the second reference is perpendicular to the right plane. So that's what we want. I'm going to hit OK, and this is what your plane should look like. From here, I'm going to come up and create another plane. And this plane is going to be using the first plane we made as a reference. So you could see that comes up here. If it didn't come up automatically, be sure to select this plane. That being said, I'm going to set this plane to be 0.76 inches in the offset this direction. So that's, you're going to come up here and click on offset distance. From here, the next step is to convert this line to our plane that we just made. So click on the plane we made and hit sketch. Then I'm going to click on this line, this dotted line, and I'm going to hit convert entities. And you're going to see that that line is now converted to our plane. So I clicked on it just now and I made it for construction. It's now a construction line. From here, I can come up to the top and click on ellipse. And I could set the center of my ellipse to be the center of the line. When I drag out, you can see I can actually select the endpoint of the line that we projected and then drag out the ellipse maybe just about here, because we're going to set a dimension here. And I'm going to set a dimension here between this point and this point. And I'm going to make this dimension 1.54. I'm going to exit the sketch. Before we continue, let's go back to our first sketch and make sure of something. So go to here, sketch 1, right click, edit the sketch, and let's make sure that this line is a construction line. You'll see why in a moment. I'm going to exit the sketch, and now I'm going to go back to all the way back to where we are now in the lesson. And I'm going to come up here to where it says curves under the features tab, and I'm going to click on curves, and I'm going to go to project curve. So I'm going to select this ellipse, and I'm also going to select this arc. And so you're going to see that you actually get a projection of these two lines. The first projection is in this direction, the direction of this arc, and the second direction is the direction of this ellipse. So those two curves have created a third curve, which is the projection of both of them. So I'm going to go and hit OK. And so there's our projection. From here, we're going to create another plane. So come over to the Features tab, and let's go to Reference Geometry, and we're going to create a plane. Our first reference is going to be our front plane, which is what we created our first sketch and first circle, or second sketch and first circle on. So I'm going to click on front plane, and our second reference is going to be this point right here. It's the arc, it's the point on the second arc that we created here in this sketch. So I'm going to click on it and hit OK. And now we have our plane. So from here, I'm going to create a sketch on this plane, and I'm going to come up here and select 3-point arc, and I'm going to just place a 3-point arc here. And from here, I'm going to select this point, and I'm going to select our projection. So I'm going to click on both of these, and I'm going to come over here and hit pierce. I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. I'm going to click on this point, and I'm going to click on our projection, and I'm going to come up here and click pierce. And so as you can see, we have an arc that's pierced to the projection. So the third thing to do is to click on this point and click on the arc and make them coincident with each other. So now our arc is fully defined. And so from here, the next step that we want to do is we want to project a line that goes from this point all the way through our projection to this point. So to do that, what we're going to do is we're going to create a line that's construction between this point and this point. And we're going to come up here and exit our sketch. Now we're out of our sketch. Now we're going to come up and we're going to click on the little arrow under sketch, and we're going to click on 3D sketch. We are now in a 3D sketch. And 3D sketching allows you basically to create sketches in all different planes of reference. So from here, we're going to convert entities, and we're going to click on the arc, the projection, I should say. And I'm going to hit OK. And so now we've projected our original projected line. And from here, what we want to do is we want to see if we can trim entities. Oh, we can't because we haven't projected our dotted line yet. So click on our dotted line we made and hit Convert Entities. And now we can go to Trim Entities up here at the top, and we can click on these two entities that we don't want. So basically what that's going to leave us with is basically half of the projected line. So we're left with this line, with these two lines being cut away, and with these two lines being here, which we want. From here, I'm just going to go and delete this dotted line. I don't need it, so I'm just going to get rid of it. It served its purpose. And so from here, we're going to exit our 3D sketch, and we're going to see if it's possible to create a loft, a surface loft, based on the geometry that we currently have. So I'm going to come up and hit lofted surface. And so I'm going to select this first profile, which is actually our projection that we just converted. And I'm also going to select this arc. And right now you could see that it gives me this surface so far. So now that I see that the surface is successful, I'm going to click on guide curves, and I'm going to select this to be my guide curve. And so that fully creates the shape that we want along both the two profiles and the guide curves. So I'm going to go ahead and hit check for OK. And I can see it looks the way I want it to based on the geometry that I gave it. From here, we're going to create another plane. So let's go to our Features tab, Reference Geometry, Create a Plane. And our first reference plane is going to be the top plane for the origin planes. So click on that. And our second reference is going to be this point here. It's the point of the edge of the loft. So right here. I'm going to click on that and hit OK. And so from here, I'm going to start a sketch on this plane. And I'm going to make a few 3-point arcs that go from the point at the end and that come out, but that are tangent to this point. So I'm actually going to create a construction line that comes off this point, and it's going to be horizontal. So if I look at it from the top, this line is going to be vertical, and it's going to be tangent with my curve. And so I'm just going to drag this out to about maybe here. And I'm going to create another curve that starts here on this line, and that touches the edge of the surface. So I'm going to select both of these, and I'm going to make them tangent. I'm actually going to go up here, and I'm going to turn off the planes, and that will hopefully make it a little bit easier to see as we continue here. So I turned off the visibility up here. You can see the glasses. It allows you to turn on and off visibility of different things. So it's a little bit easier to see now. So I'm just going to look at it again. I'm going to select this line and make it construction because it's not being used. It's just for tangency. So I'm going to select this point, and I'm going to select the circle, and I'm going to pierce them. And now they're connected. We created our first tangent line, so now we need to create our second. I'm going to do this by using the 3D sketch command. So I'm going to come here, select 3D sketch, and the first thing I'm going to do is select the line option, and I'm going to make a construction line that connects this point to this point, basically the two edges of our loft. So as you can see, we now have a construction line here, and I could drag another construction line from the middle of this line down to the bottom of the arc. And so from here, I can now use this to create my line that's going to connect the bottom of this surface to the bottom of this surface. Going to come up here, click on line, and I'm going to select this point first, and I'm going to drag it out, and I'm just going to place it here for now. Reason being that I want to select the center point right here of this line we made and convert it. And so with that line converted, I can now place this line right where it needs to be based on the center of this point. So I'm going to drag this down. And this line, basically, that I just created, I'm going to make a construction. It's intersecting the point that we want. So if I drag this up, if I first convert this and then drag this point up, I can actually place these two together. I can make them coincident. So now this dotted line is sitting on the circle. I'm going to make that construction as well. And now it's really easy for me to connect these 2 points. All I have to do is select them both and hit merge. And now they're merged with each other. So from here, we now have our 2 lines, and these are our profiles. But what we need to do now that we've created these 2 profiles is we need to create 2 more lines that are going to be used as our describing lines, or as our profile lines. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the 3D sketch again. So I'm going to start another 3D sketch. And I'm going to drag out 3-point arc and select this point here, as well as this center point here. And I can kind of place my arc right on top of that edge. I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. Except here, I have my point here and I have my point here. This point does not sit horizontal with the center point here, which is actually the end of the first line that we made in this part. So what that's going to look like is I'm going to come up and I'm going to first exit the sketch. One rule of thumb is that all of these lines need to be created in their own sketch. So this is its own sketch, this straight line is its own sketch, this arc is its own sketch, and now the 4th one I'm going to make, this arc, is also going to be in its own sketch. It's going to be a 3D sketch. I'm going to select this point, and I'm going to select this point, and I can lay my 3-point arc right on top of this edge here. So now I can try to go for a loft. I'm going to exit out. I'm going to go to surfaces, and I'm going to go to lofted surface. So I'm going to select this line and this line, and these are my 2 profiles. And then for my guide curves, my describing lines, I'm going to select the arc I made, which is easier to select actually from the tree here, and the other arc I made. So my 2 arcs are now selected, and it's giving me the profile that I want. So I'm going to come up here and hit OK. We need to create a couple more lines before we're done here with this part. So the first one that we're going to make is going to happen on the right plane. So I'm going to come down here and click on this arrow. And now we're looking at our part from the right. So if I come up to the top and start a 3D sketch, when I place my 3-point arc, it's going to always be on the right plane within the 3D sketch. So I'm going to set my line to look a little something like that. And be sure that your lines are intersecting with the surface and with this projected line. So the way to do that is I'm going to come up here and I'm going to just kind of move my arc up until it's coincident with this line. Let me exit out of this. So I'm going to move this up, and it's now fixed to the center of our arc there. And you'll know it's centered when you can't really move it around anymore, and when you see the two relations. So with this arc, the end point of this arc, we want to connect it to the circle. It's connected, but it's not connected to the center of it. So what I want to do is I want to convert this point, and I can now draw a dotted line from this point up, and that's going to give me a better understanding of where I need to connect to. So I'm going to convert this, and I'm going to convert this circle to be construction. And if I select this point and a construction circle, I can make them coincident. Once I do that, it's very simple for me to just click on the end point of my arc and this point here and merge them. Now they're merged. So I'm going to exit out of this 3D sketch. And once you exit out of your 3D sketch, you need to enter into your next one. So I'm going to come up here and start another 3D sketch. And I'm going to select this line right here. I'm going to convert entities, and I'm going to exit once again. And as I believe I mentioned before, you have to start a new sketch for each profile line. You can't have two profile lines in one sketch. Solidworks won't be able to pick that up. So you can see this is my first one, this is my second one, and we have two more to do. So I'm going to come up here, start another one, go to convert entities, and I'm going to convert this entire projection here. So I'm going to hit OK. And what I want to do now to make this a little bit easier to trim is I'm going to come up here, create a line, and it's going to be a construction line. I'm going to put it across from here to here of my surface. And you could see now it's going to be easier when I come up here to trim. I can now easily trim this line, and I could also trim this line and this line, which I don't need. I just need this line right here. So that's the line we want, this one right here. It's actually easier to see in black. So that's our third one. And I'm going to make sure to exit out of this 3D sketch. And now I'm going to enter into a fourth 3D sketch. So from here, I'm going to come up and select 3-point arc. I'm going to select this point, and I'm going to select the intersection point here between our two surfaces. And I'm just going to lay down my line. And you can see that my line sits flat on that edge. So with that being done, I'm going to exit out for the fourth time. And I'm going to go to surfaces and create a lofted surface. So I'm going to select the lines that I want for profiles. So these are my two profile lines, and you can see what the surface looks like thus far. But the magic of it is that once I select my two guide curves, which is this one, which maybe it's a little easier to choose it actually from this little drop down tree right here, I want to select this one, and I want to select this one. And you're going to see that the profile complies with the guide curves that I've set. So I'm going to hit OK. And you can see that it's given us really the profile that we want. So if you find issues with consistency, you could actually see that there's a little bit of an edge here between this surface and the bottom surface. You can change your influence here to be for next edge, or you could also change the start and end constraints to be curvature or tangency, and that's going to influence the way that the surface actually behaves when it touches the surface underneath it. So we have a little bit of a different profile here. So we're just going to leave it like this for now, for this example. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to mirror this surface and this surface over to the other side. So I'm going to come up to our features, and I'm going to click on mirror, and my mirror plane is going to be the right plane, and my mirror bodies, now I want to point something out here. There are features, faces, and bodies that you can mirror. In this case, we're doing surface bodies. That's what we're mirroring. So we want to make sure that we have mirror body selected. So I'm going to select this body and this body, and it gives you a little preview. And I'm going to hit OK. And now our bodies have been mirrored to the other side. So we see that we actually have a split here between these two surfaces. This is something that happens, especially if your sketch is not completely in the center or something like that, or if your sketches are correctly made, but there's something that you didn't account for in your surface loft settings. So I can come back here and change my constraint to be different, or I can choose to connect both of these using one of our surface features. So I can actually go to filled surface, and I can choose this face, this line, and this line, and that's actually going to close up and repair that little inconsistency. Off camera, I've made some changes to my geometry here. I brought this closer to the barrel here, and I also changed the end condition and the geometry a little bit here with these surfaces. And I encourage anyone that's building this to go back into your dimensions in some of your older sketches and change them around, move the arcs around, that type of thing. It's a great learning experience to play with those dimensions and lines to find out the kind of shapes that you can get in SolidWorks. So that being said, we're going to continue with the development. I'm going to start by looking at the right plane of the part, and I'm going to come up here to sketch, and I'm going to start a sketch on the right plane. So the first thing I'm going to do is come up here, pull out a 3-point arc, and it's going to start here at the tip of this edge right here, and it's going to come down, and I'm going to attach another arc to it, and that's going to be tangent to the first one. So I'm going to click both of these, set them to be tangent, and I'm going to attach this to this point up here. So now we have our first arc made, or set of arcs I should say. I'm going to exit out of this sketch, and I'm going to come up here to visibility and enable planes, because the next thing I want to do is I want to look at this plane which I created in the past, and I want to use this plane to create my next arc, which I'm going to use. I'm also going to come up here and show the sketches. So I'm going to start a sketch on this plane, just a regular sketch, not a 3D one. And I'm going to come up here and click on 3-point arc. And I'm going to select this point and this point, and I'm going to drag down an arc. And you could see the arc there. And if I click on my two lines and convert them, I get a projection on this sketch. So I'm going to make this for construction. So just to show that again, in case I'm going too quickly, what I did is I clicked on both of these sketches on the sketch that I just made. I'm sorry, I clicked on both of these arcs on the sketch I just made. And I came up here and hit Convert Entities. And then I hit OK. And what that did was that gives me this dotted line. And I can click on this arc and click on this point and make them coincident with each other. And when I do that, I can rest assured that these arcs are now, I should say this arc is sitting at the bottommost point of this one. And so you can see it's fully defined now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to see if I can create a filled surface. I'm going to come up here under Surfaces to Filled Surface. And I'm first going to click on our projected line here. And you could already see it gives me this preview. So obviously this isn't what we want just yet. But I'm also going to select under Constraint Curves this arc and this arc. And selecting both of those, it's going to change our geometry dramatically. So I'm going to come up here and hit OK. And you can see that it's actually created a surface that's very much like what we want. And so from here, I'm just going to come up here and save this. If you're still following along with creating this part, I almost want to say congratulations already, because we've done a large bulk of the work. From here, it gets a little bit easier. So I'm going to come up to Insert, and I'm going to go to Surface, and I'm going to go to Offset. Click on Offset, and click on the surface that we just made. Now what this tool does is it offsets surfaces. So I'm going to set my offset surface to be 40 thousandths of an inch, and I'm going to have it go obviously in the other direction. I'm just going to hit OK. And so now we have two surfaces shown. Once you make your surface offset, the next thing you want to do is delete the original surface that you made. You can do that by coming up here to the top menu and go to Insert, and then go to Features and look for Delete/Keep Body. Click on that, and we're going to delete bodies. We're going to delete this body. So I'm going to click on it. That's the inside surface, the original one. And you could select this from the feature manager here, but I just selected it in the model preview window. So with that selected, it should be called something like Surface Fill, something like that. Just hit OK, and that deletes it. And so from here, the next thing we need to do is we need to close up this gap here. So we're going to basically create a filled surface between these two surfaces. So go to Filled Surface and click on this edge and then the other edge, as well as this edge and the edge of the offset. And you're going to see that Solidworks generates a surface between them. So I'm going to hit OK. And you could see that we now have some thickness here. Before we did this, it wasn't possible to make the part because this didn't exist. You know, you can't have such a sharp edge like that in manufacturing. So from here, we're going to finish this up by adding a planar surface to the end and close that up. And from here, we're going to knit all of the surfaces that we've created. So come up here to knit surface and knit this face, this face, this face, this face, you know, the back face here, these two faces, everything. The inside cup and then the lip. And click on try to form solid and hit OK. And congratulations, you've created a solid. From here, we can kind of change the geometry here on the back to make it a little bit more aesthetically pleasing. So you can come up and go to Insert, go to Features. Actually, you want to go to, where'd it go? Dome, under Features, and click on this face. And if you bump up this number, you're going to get a different result for the end. You can actually bump it up so much that it just becomes impossible to create. So there are two options here, which I find to be a lot of fun. You can click on Elliptical Dome, or you can just have a regular dome. I'm going to click on Elliptical Dome. And when I bump this up, it's going to give me an end condition here on the end of the part. So I'm just going to bump this up until about here to make it a rounded back, and I'm going to hit OK. And congratulations, you've created a scoop.